What are you hearing for sound now?
I'm getting the, I don't see the lights right now. It's Castles in here.
Okay, good. I know we did, but it's fixed.
Good morning. Sorry for any glitches this morning. It's probably on our end, not yours. But our awesome tech team did some last-minute troubleshooting, and we are grateful for them. My name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the minister of this congregation. Our community is as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, and whoever you are on the path to becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self here and now. I extend a special welcome to any visitors and invite you to fill out a guest information card. Our administrator, Mary Weiss, who is on the YouTube chat, will, behind the UUCT logo, will post a link to that right now. And right after this worship service, I hope that everyone listening will join us on Zoom. Everyone listening live will join us on Zoom for a special congregational meeting to hear about a proposed capital project campaign from your facilities team. This proposal proposes to replace the 50-year-old HVAC, which is well due a retirement here in Holland, and as part of that project to reconfigure the bathrooms here to make them ADA accessible. And it also looks at the possibility of adding a ramp right in front of where I am right now to the chancel so that more people could access this low stage. The vote today is whether or not to start fundraising for this capital project. There will be a vote on the final design later. We will meet at noon on Zoom, and all the materials for the meeting, as well as the Zoom link, went out in an e-blast earlier this week and then again this morning, so look there. Because of this meeting, there will not be social hour today because we need to use that Zoom space to prep for that meeting. There are, I think, 10 of us here in Holland. You would see myself and Preston McMillan, our worship associate, who you will not see this morning because he's having some separation anxiety, is my son Otis, and our child care provider this morning, Lily Ware. We have Reverend Julie Olson, our chaplain this morning, and our fabulous, wonderful live streaming tech team, Cassandra Klein, Liz Ravenwood, Cynthia Johnson, Larry Newhouse, and Glenn Knowlton. And they're waving at you now, I think. But again, most of our worship leaders have chosen to pre-record their videos. Indoor in-person meetings are still not permitted on our campus. They will be allowed once Pima County has been at a high risk level for 7 days or more on COVID Act now. But a number of teams are starting to plan some outdoor gatherings. I will draw your attention in particular to the welcoming and membership team hosting a social gathering on November 17th. Look in any of your upcoming e-blasts for more information on that. And there are more things in the works, so stay tuned for gatherings outdoors on our campus. Welcome. We are so glad you are here. That's good. Good.
Our opening words are called Each Day by the Reverend Christian Harper from the anthology Voices from the Margins. Each day provides us with an opportunity to love again, to hurt again, to embrace joy, to experience unease, to discover tragic. Each day provides us with the opportunity to live. This day is no different. This hour, no more unique than the last. Except maybe today, maybe right now, among friends and fellow journeyers, maybe for the first time, maybe silently, we can share ourselves. Now, if you have a chalice or a candle at home, I invite you to light it as Reverend Bethany lights our chalice here in Holland. And please join me for these words of chalice lighting from the Reverend Kate Romano Griffin. May the flame of this chalice, the symbol of our faith, connect us all who have come before us, all who are with us in body and spirit, and all who are yet to come into being. May it serve as a reminder of our unity and connection across all time and space.
Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation. Let this be our house, a haven for the healing, an open room for question and our inspiration. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let all in this house seek truth, where scientists and mystics abide in reverence here. Let this be our house, a house of our creation, where works of art and melodies consecrate the atmosphere. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace.
Hi friends, I have a story for you today that's about playgrounds. So I am on the church playground. Our regular daycare center rents this facility and they've been here all COVID long, but this is my first time back in a really long time and it makes me very happy to be here today. So the story about playgrounds is a story about a little boy named Anthony, and he has a disability, which you'll hear about in the story. Now, the story is a once upon a time story, which means that it's not true. And we get to imagine whatever ending we want for this story. So throughout the story I'm telling you today, I'm going to ask you to think about how we can end Anthony's story differently. Now, talking about disability and thinking about people with disabilities is a growing edge for me. I know it's a growing edge for a lot of us. It's something that's really difficult to talk about and to be honest about and to not unintentionally hurt people. So I think a lot of adults have a problem talking about disabilities because we don't want to hurt others. So if I say something or make a mistake that accidentally hurts you, please reach out and let me know. I want to do better, and I hope you'll help me. So here's the story. Once upon a time, there was a 5-year-old named Anthony. He loved to play, and he was super excited to go to school, to make new friends, and to be able to play with them. Now, Anthony uses a wheelchair to get around because that's a tool that he needs to support him, like I need my glasses. When the bell rang, it told Anthony it was time for recess, and he was so excited. As he rolled out to the playground, he realized that there were no toys he could use. Not a slide, not the swings, not the soccer field. Anthony felt so sad, and he didn't look forward to recess anymore because he couldn't play with his friends. So here's the point in the story where we get to think of a different ending. I invite you to talk with the people in the room with you, or feel free to type into the chat if you're online and would like to do that. Why can't Anthony use the toys on the playground? What prevents him from being able to use the swing or the slides or the soccer field? What could we change that would allow Anthony to play and be included with his friends? I'll give you just a short time. Go. Okay, I know that wasn't nearly enough time, but let's tell the story again, and feel free to keep talking about it with the people in the room with you or on chat if something new occurs to you. Once upon a time, there was a little boy named Anthony. He loved to play and was super excited to go to school for the first time and play with his new classmates. Anthony uses a wheelchair to get around because he needs this tool to support him, like I need my glasses. When the bell rang that told Anthony it was time for recess, he was so excited. As he rolled up to the playground, he realized there were a few smooth paths, and the basketball court was paved, which made it easy to roll on. Anthony had fun for a few minutes bouncing the ball to a couple of other kids, but they were soon kicked off because someone organized a basketball game and the other kids wouldn't pass Anthony the ball. Anthony watched from the side for a while, but eventually lost interest. Anthony felt so sad and didn't look forward to recess because he couldn't play with his friends. It's a different ending. Anthony still ends the story feeling sad. The toys and the equipment in this example are a little more diverse, but why doesn't Anthony feel included? Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves for a minute, or post in the chat. Okay, let's try the story again. Once upon a time, okay, wait, you know that part, right? Finally, the bell rang that told Anthony it was time for recess, and he was so excited. As he rolled up to the playground, he saw that there was a whole section on the playground with equipment and toys that he could play with. There was a swing he could roll up onto, a ramp that had let him roll down a slide on the other side, even some drums that made music when they were pounded. When he looked around, though, none of his classmates were on the playground with him. Hopefully, after they get to know him, more students will come over to the special playground. The principal even asked Anthony how to create a playground that would include him and the other kids who use wheelchairs, crutches, canes, or other mobility aids. How do you think Anthony felt? Anthony has a whole playground to use by himself. The other kids are not on it. That sounds sad to me. What do you think we could do to solve this? Feel free to talk amongst yourselves or post in the chat. So shall we try one more time? Once upon a time, the bell rang for recess and Anthony rolled up to the playground. He saw that there was a playground that had a traditional swing set and a swing that he could roll his chair up on, a climbing wall, and a ramp that let him roll down a slide on the other side. There were even some drums that made music when they were pounded, but on the other far side of the playground was a table and some benches for people that wanted a quieter space. When he looked around, all the kids from his class were on the playground together. Some were playing tag. A teacher had even organized a game of basketball and invited Anthony to play. He shot a pretty solid three-pointer from his chair. I'm wondering in this scenario what you think the rest of the school is like. I imagine that there's something built into the culture of this school to include everyone. It would be a place that understands that all of our needs are different and all of us are important. I also imagine that this is a school that imagined Anthony before Anthony even rolled in the doors. They imagined that there would be a 5-year-old with a wheelchair for support who wanted to play with all of their friends, and they made it possible. We too can imagine a world like that. We can imagine who's not here and imagine how we can make our facilities and our community available to them. Because at the end of the day, our bodies are always in a temporary state. Able-bodied, disabled, it will change for each of us, and the assistance and the accommodations we need will always be in flux. I just had to go and get a stronger pair of readers. I know it's not a big disability, but it's one way that I know that I'm changing, and I'm sure you can think of ways that your body is changing too.
Thank you, Jamili, for the message for all ages. Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. The life of this congregation has continued throughout the pandemic. Even though we are not meeting in person, our congregation depends on your financial support. To support the congregation, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. Thanks, Chris, for that lovely music for this morning's service. Joys and sorrows. Our earth is strong. It can hold the pain and our joys, our love and our anger, our shared bowl, which we use for joys and concern each week, is strong enough to hold the large stones and big rocks. Our collective celebrations and mournings. And also the smaller stones, which will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. The McMillan family has a particular joy that I would like to mention this morning. Two of our grandkids, aged 9 months and 2.5 years, are being dedicated to the First Unitarian Society Church in Manhattan, probably at this very moment. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and sacred resource. Let us remember the desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yapape, the Hona Odom, and the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. Let us remember those who are walking through the desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to the one that is used by those seeking greater access to water in the desert, like our ministerial partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy to share or sorrow, I invite you to type it into the chat. Speak it out loud wherever you are. As you do, the Reverend Bethany will place pebbles in the water to symbolize the joys and sorrows within our community. The pebbles create ripples of hope, even as we are far apart.
I'll lift up out of the chat or ask for healing prayers for Mary's swing brought by her daughter Kate. Mary's healing from COVID at her home. Sending you prayers of healing and strength, Mary and Kate and Jan. And will you now please join me in a spirit of meditation or prayer, contemplation, whatever is your own style. And hear these words of centering this morning from Reverend Marta Valentin. Step in to the center. Come in from the margins. I will hold you here. Don't look back or around. Feel my arms. The water is rising. I will hold you as you tremble. I will warn you. Don't look out or away. Life is in here, between you and me. In this tiny space where I end and you begin, hope lives. In this precious, tiny space, no words need to be whispered to tell us we are one. You and I, we make the circle if we choose to. Come, step in. I am waiting for you. Our reading this morning is called It's Hard Work by Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt from the anthology Been in the Storm So Long. Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt writes, why are we still talking about inclusivity and diversity when we have done so little to make them real? Why are we still looking pained at the lack of diversity in our denomination? Because diversity, inclusivity is terribly hard, terribly uncomfortable, definitely unsettling, and often quite frustrating. She continues, while I know about being inclusive, crossing from culture to culture, learning the language of diversity, is that it's the work of a lifetime. It's hard to accept people who are not like you, who don't talk the way you do, or believe the things you believe, or dress the way you do, or believe, or vote the way you do. It's even harder to appreciate them for the things about them that are not like you, to find them interesting and fun, to enjoy the learning that's part of the experience, and to acknowledge, finally, that you may have to agree to disagree. The truth is this: there is no justice, there will be no peace. We can read Thoreau and Emerson to one another, quote Rilke and Alice Walker and Howard Thurman, and think good and noble thoughts about ourselves. But if we cannot bring justice into the small circle of our own individual lives, we cannot hope to bring justice to the world. And if we do not bring justice to the world, none of us is safe and none of us will survive. Nothing that Unitarian Universalists need to do is more important than making justice real here where we are. Hard as diversity is, it is our most important task. That ends our reading. I'm going to invite you into a comfortable place that will hopefully become more comfortable. The uncomfortable first. Think of a time that you felt tolerated. Maybe parts of you were welcome in that moment, in that space, but there were parts of you that were not so welcome. Maybe you felt this way at work, at school, among friends, maybe in your biological family, maybe even here at church. How did you know which parts of you were welcome? And how did you know which parts were just tolerated? And now, think of a time when you felt belonging, complete belonging. What made you feel that way? How did you know you belonged? Did others who were different from you feel that belonging in that space, in that time too? How did you know that? Having felt these two things, one right after the other, I hope I don't need to tell you which one we are after here. It's not just tolerance. Tolerance is not enough. We are seeking something beyond tolerance here. The thing about tolerance, as we might have felt if you could think of a moment that you were just tolerated, is that it says, you are welcome here, but not that part of you. We'll deal with that, but we'd prefer if you would be more like us, less different, less trouble. Tolerance is a practice of minimizing difference, of squashing difference, but a practice that is perhaps less explicit, but that still minimizes difference, is universalizing. It's a more subtle way, less explicit, but it still is a way of kind of tolerating difference. I started thinking about that when last week in our Baja 4 service, Reverend Matthew cited Zara Ticola of Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro, a partner of our own UU Justice Arizona network. Zara said, universalism is colonization. I really had to unpack that this week, this short phrase that stuck with me. I went and listened to the episode of The View, VUU. VUU is the acronym, hosted by the Church of a Larger Fellowship, where Zara said this, and I wrestled with this notion. Universalism, I think what they're talking about here is this idea kind of saying we all bleed the same, right? That type of universalism. It focuses so strongly on our similarities between us that sometimes we forget to give attention, nurture to the differences. And this dynamic can lead to us encouraging or assuming or even demanding that another person adopt the dominant culture, the thing that is seen as not different, although we could unpack that in a different sermon. This is a form of colonization. And this framework helped me understand a piece of why our work as Unitarian Universalists, especially in this moment, is to spend some time, more time, focusing on the differences among us. Some would say that this is not the core of Unitarian Universalism's work, but I hope that you heard Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, who is the president of Star King School for the Ministry, say that this is without a doubt our most important task. I appreciate that in that reading I read earlier, she makes it clear that the work starts within. I'll read her words again. If we cannot bring justice into the small circle of our own individual lives, we cannot hope to bring justice to the world. And if we do not bring justice to the world, none of us is safe and none of us will survive. Hard as diversity is, it is our most important task, she wrote. Arthur Chan once said, diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, belonging is an outcome. And this short phrase sums up really succinctly what Jamili was trying to get at in that story in 4 parts earlier. Diversity is a fact. It is present among us, present in nature. The reason life is diversity. Diversity among humans is not just racial diversity, but any difference. Difference of gender, sexual orientation, family structure, ability, beliefs, class. You could list more. Diversity is a fact. It is among us whenever 2 or more are gathered, to borrow a phrase. Difference alone is just that, difference. It is real and always there. Inclusion is an action, Arthur Chan writes. To include difference is to make space for difference to thrive, to be noticed, to be celebrated even. But inclusion on its own can quickly become tokenization without that balance of equity, the choice of equity. We don't talk about equity too much, but I think of it as a redistribution of power towards those who are different from a dominant culture of any space or place. But without inclusion, equity, that power shift can become making the decision perhaps to have a playground that only works for some and not all, rather than a playground that works for the diversities of diversity among us, that are facts of us. The outcome of us acknowledging diversity as a fact, of including diversity, and of equitably shifting power towards those with different identities and viewpoints, these things together create a space where we can move towards belonging, that outcome. Now, I feel that, to be clear, UUs can be more than tolerant. We mostly have tolerance worked out. We do acknowledge diversity among us, at least some diversities. We're working on others. And we even try to include that difference, to acknowledge and celebrate and honor the difference in our worship, in our meetings, in our practices. But equity, that power shift, is one where there's still some work to do if belonging is on the horizon still. I was working through a current scenario with this, and I will start with a similar preface to Jamili. Disability activism, ableism, is still something that is a growing edge for me. I am learning and growing, and I definitely get things wrong more often than not. I'm trying to learn more, and also I'm going to risk fumbling around in here a little. After this worship service, many of you are headed to a congregational meeting where members of UUCT will consider whether or not to start fundraising for a capital project to make parts of this space that I'm in, Holland Sanctuary, more accessible. There would be changes to the bathrooms and perhaps even ramp access to this low east chancel. 2 projects to make that would kind of coincide with a necessary replacement of our 50-year-old HVAC. It feels past time to make our bathrooms and our chancel accessible to more people. We have acknowledged the diversity of how we move. We have tried to include those who use walkers and wheelchairs by sometimes moving service elements when we're here in person down to the ground when we want to make them more accessible. And we are now ready to consider how we might actually make this chancel, which is a space of power, accessible. How power might actually literally be able to come up here and shift up here. So I see the ramp, to work with this metaphor, which is both a metaphor and not a metaphor at all. The ramp is the action, is the inclusion. We could build a ramp. But equity, making this chancel and shifting power to this place, is a choice. The ramp is just a pathway to that power shift. And so the question for me becomes, are we ready to choose to shift power? Are we ready to hear things that make us uncomfortable? Are we ready to Change maybe the way we worship or the way we greet or meet or eat or gather to accommodate more difference among us, not just those who move with wheels and walkers and canes, but all differences among us. Unitarian Universalist religious educator and social change consultant Cristina Rivera says that Unitarian Universalists do okay with diversity and inclusion most of the time, or at least we can be prodded that way. Our struggle, she says, is when it comes to equity, to shifting power, sharing power. Because when we shift power, we sometimes give power to those who don't reflect the dominant culture. Sometimes we give them the sermon or the class or the group. And sometimes then that sermon or that class or that group isn't specifically for me, for us. Some of you were at Issues and Actions Day, sponsored by our Unitarian Universalist Justice Action Network a few weeks ago. In the second half of that gathering, we heard a message from Reverend Casey Slack. And the message from Reverend Casey was specifically for trans and non-binary persons. Janine Gelsinger, the executive director of UU Jazz, asked us gathered who listened to this, after we'd listened to this, those of us who were cisgender at least, to consider how it felt to listen to a message that wasn't for us. Reverend Casey said, this is just for trans and non-binary persons. It was a really powerful question for me because my learning from this experience was that even though Reverend Casey's message was shifting power towards a message that was not for me, their message, what they said, didn't leave me out. It didn't create less space for me. The saving message of Unitarian Universalism is a multiplier, not a divider. Just because a message or a class or a group or any power shifts away from my specific needs does not mean that there is less Unitarian Universalism for me. Our faith doesn't work like that. The more we extend the message that you are whole and holy just as you are, the more our faith grows, the more space there is for me, for you, for us. And this need, I call that, and that's kind of my shorthand for shared liberation, getting free together. This really clears out when I think about ability access, because all of us are temporarily able-bodied. Some of us are temporarily able-bodied. My joints and muscles can work together to move my body today. I can use my eyes with some contacts for adjustment to see today. I can hear without external aids right now. I can find nourishment and regulate my immune system and manage my mental health. All right. Okay, today. But tomorrow, the next day, a year, 10 years from now, who knows? This body, my body, is temporarily able-bodied. Subject to change, though. So I might be able to use the stairs to get up to this chancel today, but tomorrow, a year from now, 10, 20, 50 years from now, I might need a ramp. And this isn't just about my need to use the ramp, right? It's about my need to hear and see and feel power shift when our chancel, our bathrooms, our space is more accessible to people of many abilities. Because equity, that choice to shift power, is necessary to create a space of belonging for all. I can't be free until all of us are free. The eighth principle of Unitarian Universalism, which this congregation voted to adopt last May, commits all of us now to journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This is a journey towards spiritual wholeness. We cannot be spiritually whole until every difference among us is honored. We cannot be spiritually whole until we have dismantled structures of oppression and racism in ourselves and in our institutions. None of us can be spiritually whole until all of us are free. Hard as it is, this is our most important task. It is good to be with you all on this journey. May we make it so.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die. We dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a way to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. A child is born among us, and we feel a special glow. We see times in this journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear imagination freely running wild. We dedicate our minds and hearts to the spirit of this child. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a time to be together. And with the grace of age, we share the wonder of youth. And we believe that growing is an answer. Our lives are full of wonder, and our time is very brief. The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die. And when our lives are done, the memories we shared with friends, they will linger on and on. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow. We have the gift to believe that peace within our living is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a joy being together. And in our search for peace, may maybe we'll find all we see. Even to question truly is an answer.
Our words of closing today come from Andrea Hawkins Camper. May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For if not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now, to be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. And will you join me now in our words of chalice extinguishing as Preston extinguishes our chalice? We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again.